Hi. So I asked Sandy beforehand what sort of level of technicality her talk was on a 1 to 10, and she told me it was about a 5. Based on just hearing the end there, I reckon mine's about a -5. So this isn't a technical talk. This is the talk that comes after you've had your lunch and it's starting to digest, and you're now sort of ready for a nap. It's not something that you need to think too hard about. And I'm talking about productivity. I actually wrote most of this talk last year in Barcelona. I came for a couple of days either side of this conference. And I went down to the beach to write the talk, which was nice. Barcelona is a great place, great city. And I sort of went down, sat on the beach, opened my laptop, started working, looked around and realized that absolutely no one else was using their laptops on the beach. I think I'm the odd one out. And then after a while, I realized why. Because as sort of my battery started getting low, and I sort of realized I needed a PowerPoint, and I started scraping through the sand trying to find somewhere to plug in. And they've not installed any PowerPoints at all on the beach. So yeah, that was my experience of writing this talk last year. But I sort of got quite far with it, and then decided I wanted to go and see what other books people had written on productivity, what else was out there. And so I went and had a look on Amazon to see what other people had written, and there's loads and loads of books out there. This was one that I picked out that I really liked. It's called How to Overcome Boredom, Productivity Tips to Better Your Life. It's like the most boring-looking book you will ever see in the world as a guide to how to fix boredom. It's grey, it's got a bored woman with an old CRT monitor, and in the background, I don't know if you can see, it's a really low-res image, but there's a drinks cabinet from where I presume she drinks away the boredom all day long. So I decided not to buy that one. And then I saw this one, which I was like, this is the opposite, right? This is like colors, bold, yeah. Jumped out at me, I was like, great, I'll buy it. And then I noticed this bit at the top, 20 essential self-esteem boosters for women. And in that split second, this became utterly irrelevant for me, highly sexist, and really patronizing to the women who apparently can only be productive because they're trying to boost their self-esteem. So I got rid of that one as well. But I have read a few books on productivity, and one of the things that I've learned is that there's no sort of magic formula for being productive. You're an individual, and that's great. There are certain things that will make you productive, there are certain things that will make you not productive. But I do think that we're all human, and that we all share similar traits, and therefore I think there's value in looking at what makes us generally productive and what doesn't. So all of that introduction was basically a really long way to say that I'm going to spend 30 minutes talking about me, and talking about what makes me productive and what doesn't make me productive, and hope that that's of some value. So I should introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Walker. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at New Media Education. I've been coding for a very long time in Ruby since about 2005. And the first thing you should know about me is that I work too hard. I'm one of those developers that loves developing. I'm an entrepreneur who loves building companies and building projects. And I also love helping people. I love talking at events. I love going to conferences. I love running events and startup weekends and all sorts of stuff. So I leave very little time in my life for relaxing, for sleeping, for socializing, for all of the good stuff that I'm going to tell you should do lots of. And I want to start by showing you this photo. This is a photo of me at 4:49 in the morning. I should explain why I have this photo, actually. So I have something on my computer that every time I commit to Git, it takes a photo of me. I highly recommend you get this. I did it with the principle that I look like this, and when I look like this, I write really shit code. And I figured if seeing lots of photos of me doing this and then looking at the shit code would make me sort of think there's some correlation here, maybe I should stop looking like this and stop writing shit code. It's not worked yet, I still write shit code. But anyway, so this is 4:49. I think I'd been working for about 14 hours, looking back across the commits. I don't think I'd had a break. I'm pretty sure I can't focus on the screen anymore. I don't know how well you can see, but my eyes are so wide open, I think they're stuck in that position. And I think if I tried to blink, I think they'd get to the close bit and not manage to open again. And I'm showing you this not to show off and not to be like, I can work late. Any old idiot can work until 4:49 in the morning. And that's really my point, is that I'm any old idiot. I am the person that works until 4:49 in the morning, and that's stupid and bad. And I want to start this talk off by making sure you all realize that I'm not standing here saying I am Mr. Productive, I am the productivity guru. I'm standing here saying I am the person who often really fucks up when it comes to productivity, and that I hope you will learn from some of my mistakes so you don't waste your time as well. On a really serious note to start with, I want to say that working too hard will break you. I've had friends, I've had family who have worked too hard and have had breakdowns because they've done that. My best friend's dad couldn't work for about 20 years after he had a big breakdown because he worked too hard. And I've seen that a lot. And so I would warn you at the beginning that I think it's really, really important that you don't work too hard in life, that you get a balance. But I do want to start with a little rant. And that is that there are these things that go around where people say work as little as possible. There's books like The 4-Hour Work Week, which basically says work for 4 hours and then sit on a beach being rich. Literally, that's what it says. It's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, this has become really popular. This was a New York Times bestseller. And there's also phrases like work smart, not hard. Another phrase that really, really irritates me, because if you find some magic way to work smart, which means you can do everything in 10 times, a tenth of the time, then why would you not choose to work smart and hard and get 10 times more done? It just really irritates me. So I really like Edison. I know everyone likes Tesla, and everyone thinks Tesla's like God and Edison's shit, but he did quite a lot of good stuff. So I'm going to quote him a couple of times. And I want to start off by this quote by him, which is, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." And this is one of my all-time favorite quotes, which basically says, yeah, you're going to be creative. Yeah, you need that. But actually, most of your success and most of your productivity is going to come from that 99% of just sweating, just pushing yourself through it. And I like to think of musicians in this, people who are really, really creative and have this moment where they're, write some amazing lyrics or come up with an amazing riff. But actually, it's the 99% of the other time when they're working incredibly hard that means that that then turns into something massively successful. End of rant. What is productivity? So the dictionary defines it as achieving or producing a significant amount or result. For the purpose of this talk, I want to look at it as maximizing your output for your input. I also just want to point out that maximizing has an S and not a Z in it. That's just for the Americans out here. We invented the language. We get to choose how it's spelled. So what do I mean by that? Thanks for your support for the British. So I mean that if you want to work a 40-hour week, that's great. Go and work a 40-hour week. But make sure that every single minute that you're working is productive. Make sure that you're getting 40 hours of output. If you want to work an 80-hour week, that's your decision. Go do it too. But make sure you get 80 hours of output. The amount of times that I work 80-hour weeks, but I only get 30 hours of output because I'm so knackered and grumpy for the whole time, I actually achieve nothing. And I'm just sitting there pretending to slog away and trying, but failing. So refactoring your productivity is about working out how to get the most from every moment. And this starts with mindset. I gave a version of this talk at Frozen Wales in November, and I said there that I'd had a really tough year. It's about a year on from that now, and I've had a really tough 2 years. Personally, I had a lot of very difficult challenges, and professionally, it's been a real slog. But actually, that's been really good at focusing my mind and making me understand what drives me. Because when I'm feeling really shit and something really bad's happened, and I do not want to get out of bed, I do not want to have to go and see anyone or do anything. Actually, understanding what really drives me and what really motivates me has been an incredibly useful lesson. So I want to talk quickly about motivation, and I want to talk about what gets me out of bed in the morning. Now, for a lot of people, they think that money gets them out of bed. I'm sure I used to think this too at one point. I'm now pretty sure that it doesn't. Money is something we all want. We all want to be rich. We all want to have money to spend. We all want to be able to do stuff. We want freedom that comes with money. But actually, on a day-to-day basis, whether we are productive or not very rarely affects how much money we're going to get. If we're salaried, then we're probably just going to get the same amount of money at the end of the month as long as we do OK. If you're a consultant, then half the time, if you work a third as quickly, you'll have 3 days more work and you get paid more. So actually, I don't think money is linked to productivity at all. And career progression, this is another one that everyone sort of raves on about, more in traditional industries. This idea that you're moving up a ladder throughout your career and you're trying to get to the top. Scott from GitHub spoke at this conference last year, and while he was here, he said, why would you want to get promoted? And he was talking about GitHub's very flat structure. Everyone's self-managed. There aren't managers, there aren't bosses. Everyone's just very accountable for their own actions. And he was saying, why as a developer would you want to sit there? If you love code, why would you want to swap that for having to manage people? It makes no sense. I don't work for GitHub, I have nothing to do with GitHub, but I really respect this attitude. And in my company, we're trying to do very much the same thing with flat teams. This is a graph. This is a graph that's powered by an Excel spreadsheet. This is actually PowerPoint. It's great. This is an actual Microsoft product being used in the wild. So this is PowerPoint with an Excel spreadsheet powering a graph. It's also a slight nod to Matt's wherever he is. Yeah, this is a graph of GitHub's employees. And the red bit shows all of the employees, and there are 270 or something now, that have started working in GitHub and are still there. And the blue shows all of the ones that have voluntarily quit. Now, this to me says something. This says that the people at GitHub aren't worried about career progression. They're not looking to move up the next rung of the ladder, because there isn't one there. And actually, they're all quite happy just doing what they do, and they're not wanting to go and look for other things. So to me, that's a really powerful thing. And so I don't think career progression is a day-to-day motivator. So let's stop crossing things out and talk about some stuff that is. So writing software. So I love coding. I'm proud to say I'm a geek. This was me, aged about 8. This is when I started coding. Not at this moment, that's a dog, not a computer, in case the photo is too low res to see, but around this time. And I started with Easy Amos. I don't know if any of you know Easy Amos. It was a basic dialect on the Amiga. And I fell in love. It was good times. And after a while, I progressed from Easy Amos to Amos. And then I progressed from Amos to Amos 3D. I proudly remember having a 3D Starship Enterprise land in my 2D platform game. And then I did the normal thing of, playing with C, doing all this stuff. Then I discovered PHP. Oh, yeah. They were the good times, all the dark ages. And then about 2005, I discovered Ruby. Cheer. I discovered Ruby, and and love that too. And the thing that's underpinned all of this has been, it's not been the language or the technology that I've loved, it's the creating stuff, it's the coding, it's the doing that I've really liked. And I think developers generally really love coding, and I think we're really fortunate in this. I don't think many bus drivers go to work because they love driving buses. Some of them might, but the vast majority do it because they just want to earn some money, and that's what they have to do. I think we are very, very fortunate people, especially people at a conference like this. You're coming because you probably love Ruby or you love working in it. You love what you do for your job, and that in itself is something that motivates you. Often I'm lying in bed in the morning and I think, actually, I'll get up and write some code. That's a fun thing to do. Learning something. I'm a massive, massive fan of learning. I think it's really important. I want to get better at my craft. I want to skill up all the time. So since I've started Rails, again, back in 2005, Railscast, Peep Code, Destroy All Software, all of these things have been really important things that I've learned from. Thank you. So learning stuff. Again, lying in bed, don't really want to code, but the idea that I'll get a little bit better at what I do that day, often it's a motivator. Achieving something. I want to go to bed at night looking back on my day and knowing that I've achieved something with my day, and that's a really important thing to me. And finally, for me, making the world better. And I actually think this is a motivator for lots of people, and I think a lot of people don't really realize it. The company I run, we're creating a medical education network. We're basically revolutionizing medical education, so making better doctors, better nurses all over the world. And we're doing it because we want to save lives, and that's what really motivates my co-founder and I to pretty much kill ourselves trying to do this, is that we want to make the world a better place. And actually, when I can't bother to write software and I can't bother to learn anything, and I don't care if I achieve anything, actually it's the altruistic part of me that actually really motivates me. I want to talk about this man. This is Dr. Valen Buick. He is my co-founder's father. He's a good friend of mine. He's now retired, but 20 years ago, he was a surgeon, a children's surgeon. And he used to go into hospitals at the weekend, and for no extra money, for no sort of career progression, he was already a surgeon by this point. He'd got there. He went in to operate on kids to help them. And his motivations, they weren't cash, they weren't career progression. They were him loving medicine. They were him wanting to get better. They were him wanting to achieve something, and him wanting to do something to help these kids. And that was great. But then the UK government came along and decided, well, hold on, if you're going to work at the weekend, you need to be paid for doing all this work. Fine. We're also going to start rotoring it and make this a bit more official and a bit formal. OK, fair enough. The doctor sort of said, well, look, hold on, we're just doing this off our own backs. That's the way it should be. The government said, no, let's force this, let's put a system in place. Fast forward 20 years later, we now have doctors in the UK striking over pay and pensions, being forced to work at weekends when they don't want to. And these doctors aren't worse people. They're I work with these guys all the time. They're amazing, they're conscientious, they're really passionate about what they do. But the problem is their motivations have been changed. No longer are they going and working at weekends because that's what they want to do. They've been told they have to do it, and now they have expectations. They've lost the ability to control the reason that they're doing the things they're doing. And I think that's a really important thing for all of us and myself to know, is what motivates us. When we're struggling in the afternoon and we're really bored and that was a really big lunch and we can't be bothered, what is it that we have to say to ourselves that pushes us through that afternoon? And taking ownership of your motivations, working out what they are for you, I think is a massively important part of that. Steve Jobs said that your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And that's sort of what I'm trying to say. So make sure that your day-to-day work excites you. If it doesn't, if you're sitting there bored every day behind a desk, you're not going to be productive. Go and find another job. I get job offers in my inbox every day. I'm sure all of you do. Go and just take one of them and just explore. And also open source. Get involved in open source. I don't think there's a better way to get better at learning, to achieve, to help other people, or just to enjoy writing code. I do think there's a fear for a lot of people about getting involved in open source in the first place. Fear's a bad thing, and fear, Zed Shaw, again, last year here, said, fear kills creativity, and that's really true. I think we're often afraid of failing, and failing sucks, and it's okay to be afraid of failing. Like, failing is a really horrible thing. You invest hours of your time into doing something, and it doesn't work. You know, you run a business and it fails. You write some code and you break the build. You do your first ever commit on GitHub and you don't squash the commits and someone tells you off. Like, whatever these things are, failing, whatever level, sucks. But actually, failure leads to learning. And if you're afraid of failure and afraid to take those risks, often you won't learn and you won't progress as a person. Another Edison quote, he said, and I think this was something to do with light bulbs, he said, "I've not failed 700 times, I've not failed once. I've succeeded in proving that those 700 ways will not work, and when I've eliminated the ways that will not work, I will find the way that does work." And I think that's awesome. And that's the way I now try and look at everything that goes wrong in my life, is actually just a learning process. Every time I write some code that's just shit and I come back to it, I look and try and work out how I can do that better. And that process, that constant mental agility to do that, has made me significantly more productive on a day-to-day basis. So don't be scared of failing. Also, don't worry that you're not good enough. There's a lot of developers, I think, have this fear that they're not good enough. And that can be a really dangerous and sad thing. I think often the people that fear they're not good developers are the people who are most conscientious about developing, and the people who really care the most. So maybe if you're scared that you're not good enough, that's a good thing because you really care. But just go and take the risk and the plunge and put something on, like put a pull request to Steve Klabnik, and you'll get like at least 3 multicolored hearts as a comment or something. It'll cheer you up. The UK has gone health and safety mad. This has got ridiculous. So there was recently a department that looked at abuses for health and safety by various people. I want to talk to you about candy floss. Candy floss, or as the Americans incorrectly call it, cotton candy, has been around since the 16th century. Do you know that the Americans have a National Cotton Candy Day? 7th of December. If you ever wonder why America's obese, it's things like that. Anyway, since the 16th century, I had a Google. I can't find one injury related to cotton candy. However, in one area of the UK, this has been banned. For any of you that can't read English, there is a risk that children may impale themselves on the sticks. Here's another one, conkers. I don't know if you guys know what this is. This is a very traditional English thing. You get little horse chestnut things and whack them against each other, and the ones that breaks loses. When I was a kid, this was like a real thing when we were like 7. I used to get some the day before, soak them in vinegar, and bake them in the oven so they were rock solid, and I would always win. It was awesome. Anyway, another 16th century invention, this time in the Balkans. We got it in England in about the 18th century. But again, banned. This one's almost even more crazy. In one school in the UK now, they have to wear eye protection to play this. It's just ridiculous. But I often think we have the same issue in the Ruby and the Rails community. And I think Sandy was just touching on this a little bit about being boxed into rules that have been put on you. So Rails especially is very much about, these are the ways you should do stuff. If you stay in these areas, you'll write good code. And that's pretty much true. However, Hampton Catlin said last year, if you don't use a strict development methodology, you might run the risk of succeeding. It's a difficult quote to read out. I really like that. I think it's really true. Methodologies and procedures are really, really important. Testing, all of these stuff, structuring code well, massively important. But sometimes I think Rails can really limit the way that you do things. Say, for example, Rails has helpers. It doesn't have decorators. And I know loads of devs who still wouldn't think of using decorators because they're not something out the box. And that's a really limiting thing. Classes are all nouns, they're not verbs. Corey has been chatting about this a lot, naming your classes as verbs and thinking in that way. And I've started doing that, and I find it a really, really helpful thing to do. Shoehorning TDD into everything. If you've ever tried to test drive Rails views, it's like hell. It's like the most soul-destroying, productivity-destroying thing in the world, in my opinion. And actually, knowing when and where to use these tools is really important. It's important to know why you're doing all these things. Why are you using helpers? When are you using decorators? And rather than just following blindly, actually understanding all of these things. Vim. Use Vim. Please use Vim. So Vim is awesome. So I moved to Vim in January. For my sins, I hadn't been using it. I feel like I've wasted the last 28 years of my life. For 2 weeks, I couldn't move a cursor. It was awful. But already, I am so much more productive in that editor than I was in TextMate or anything else I was using. If you don't use Vim, literally, it is the best 2 weeks of just pain that you will ever go through. The outcome is amazing. And take the time to master it as well. So I'm pretty sure that if I spend 60 years trying to master Vim, I'm going to fail. And unless you're Tim Pope, you're probably going to fail too. But actually, already, I've got some really cool macros that run some tests in really cool ways and do stuff that is absolutely essential to my productivity and speeds me up so much. The idea that you never have to leave the terminal, that you can just stay plugged into this one zone that you're in, is massively valuable. I do feel the need as well, just to say, you may also choose to use Emacs. Jim's not here this weekend, but I felt I should probably put that slide in. Find solutions to problems. So if you're running into problems in your day-to-day stuff, don't just sit there and put up with the pain. Understand what's causing that pain and fix it. So everyone has slow tests. Slow tests are the bane of the Rails world, at least, but generally the Ruby world, I think. For me, there's so many ways you can speed that up. Breaking your app up is a really obvious one. But things like using Zeus. Zeus is just brilliant. If you haven't used it, go and find it. I'll tweet about it later for you. It speeds tests up so amazingly. Turning off the garbage collector was something that came out in a blog post last week that apparently increased it by about 15%. But there are loads of different ways you can do this. And I'm not just talking about tests. Anything that's a problem for you, work out how to solve it. And also start automating things. So one of the things that I found really, really valuable is automating everything I possibly can. And this comes down to the core thing about being a programmer, which is to be lazy. If you have to type the same thing twice, you've typed it one time too many. And going all the way back to the working smart and hard, the being lazy bit, that's the working smart. If you can work in a really lazy way, and just write a chef script the first time you build a machine, don't bother building it, and then next time you can just build 10 machines in no time. Doing all these things are crucially valuable. Steve. So Steve's awesome. Steve is a Ruby hero. He's one of my favorite guys in the open source world. There's no one more lovely to send a pull request to. You might not also know, though, that Steve is the king of the distraction trolls. So I probably need to explain this. So this is me, somewhere in England, and I am in the zone. I am right there. And as a side note, you can tell I'm in the zone because of this stick. So the one thing that my Git photo thing has shown up so far, conclusively, is that when I chew bits of wood, I become a better programmer. I don't understand it. It might be correlation, but I'm hoping it's causation. Anyway, somewhere in England, I'm in the zone. Steve, however, is in his evil lair, wherever he is in the world at that time, plotting how to destroy my day. And he's sitting there, and he's basically reading all of the news, finding all of the new tech stuff, and working out what interesting tweets to post to just absolutely wreck my day. He knows that he is going to post these things, I'm going to check Twitter, and that's game over for me. For a long time, I thought Steve, this nice, lovely guy, was actually inside pure evil. What I've realized is Steve's not evil. Steve's lovely. Twitter is evil. And this was confirmed to me when I came across Ruby dramas. If you don't know about Ruby dramas, good. I'm sorry I introduced it to you, but I'm presuming most of you do. So Ruby dramas is the place where, I don't know who runs the account, but somebody basically keeps a log of all of the shit that happens in Ruby, and every time there's a bit of flame bait, sets fire to it. So a year ago, DHH added concerns to the Rails router. And there was a slightly passionate conversation on the GitHub commit. Some of you are chuckling, you remember it. Yeah, it got a little bit edgy. But, you know, these are committers, they're maintainers, they're sensible people, they can sort this out. But then what Twitter does is Twitter explodes. Twitter has shit like this going on, where... And I don't know if I have a laser, but you see where it says retweeted by Ruby dramas? Right. So this is how the internet finds out about this. This was when I discovered that Twitter was really evil. So my top tip, really, for all of this is to turn off the internet. I should clarify just your bit, not the whole thing. Otherwise, you're probably going to jail, and we're probably all out of a job. But yeah, turn off the internet. And honestly, some of the most productive times I have working are times when I'm in a room and I've got no internet and I've got no distractions, for almost one single reason, which is I have no email. And email, if like Twitter is like evil, email is like the evil. It's like the worst thing ever created. So there's a quote from Aaron Patterson about 18 months ago. He said, every morning I think, damn, I'm going to get so much done today, and then I make the mistake of checking my email. And this is the story of my life. It's absolutely ridiculous. But there's a reason for this. There's a reason email is so bad. And that's because you have a limited thought capacity. This is a book you should all read if you haven't read it. I will tweet about it afterwards, so you can find a link to it. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. The content in this won a Nobel Prize in economics. And the guy that won the Nobel Prize has then basically broken that down to a book to explain in more sort of pop science terms what they're talking about. It's an absolutely brilliant book, and I highly recommend it. It starts with an experiment. You find a group of willing volunteers, in this case we have one, who are on a diet. And you offer them two desserts. You offer them some fruit and some chocolate cake. They're on a diet. They're sensible people. The vast majority, in the 90s, will choose to take the fruit. Great. You take another set of people. Maybe they look identical. And before you give them the option, you get them to do a bit of mental arithmetic. So you put some numbers in their head, about 5 or 6 numbers, I can't quite remember, and you ask them to start doing some really basic, gentle arithmetic on those numbers. And you ask them to do it for 2 minutes. About halfway through that time, you then ask them, would they like the chocolate cake or would they like the fruit? They all choose the chocolate cake. This research has been proven time and time again in lots of independent studies. It's really accurate and it's really interesting, because basically what it says is that holding lots of information in your frontal lobe affects the way that you think. And this is the problem with email, is you have all of this stuff going on at the back of your brain where you know you've got all these things that you need to deal with. And so there's a system called Getting Things Done, GTD. Another book you should all read. Again, I'll tweet about it later. And it's called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. And this basically talks about inbox zero. It talks about the idea that as emails and things come in to wreck your productivity in your lives, what you should do is file all of those things away. So if an email comes in and you don't need to look at it, it's a home-related email, file it in the I'll read this when I get home box. If it's something that needs to be done tomorrow morning, file it in the tomorrow morning box. And by doing this, and then maybe by having an app that shows you your emails when you walk in your house or whatever, you can start to get all of these things out of your mind into a system that you can trust reliably, and you stop thinking about them. So all of these things move safely out of your sight, and they're not in your inbox anymore, and safely out of your mind. And you can just get emails in, move them into a box, and carry on with almost no interruption. It makes an absolutely massive difference to your productivity. It's like Vim. It's one of those things that takes you a couple of weeks of pain to get used to, but then when you get there, it's absolutely superb. And the reason it's so superb is it lets you get into a state of flow. So Wikipedia defines flow as being fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment. That's what, if you watch the film The Social Network, when they're all there with their headphones plugged in, that's what it's talking about. It's that moment when you're there and you're just in the zone. And flow is an incredibly important thing for a developer. It takes a while to get the code base back into your head. It takes a while to hold all the pieces. And then when you get there, you start being really, really productive. And one of the key things to achieving flow is the environment you're in. And environment's a really personal thing. Some people like really loud environments. Some people like really quiet environments. I personally need environments like coffee shops. And so about 6 months ago, my favorite ever thing in the history of mankind was released. And it's called Coffeetivity. If you haven't heard about this, it is the best £1.50 you'll ever spend in your life. It plays coffee shop sounds to you through your headphones. I can sit in my room at 2 a.m. working, and I'll still think I'm in a coffee shop. You can choose whether you want the 9 a.m. coffee shop, the 12 a noon coffee shop, the 4 in the afternoon coffee shop. Users are now starting to upload their own coffee shop recordings in there, which you can get for a premium package. This thing has honestly revolutionized the way that I work, and it's brilliant. Just that white noise is superb. And coffee shops and stuff bring me on to lifestyle and health. Now, I'm not going to talk to you and patronize you about your health. We all know we're supposed to be healthy, and we all know that it's a really important part of being productive. So instead, I'm going to leave it to Joe Cutner to patronize you about your health. I'm friends with Joe as a disclaimer, but I all recommend you get this book. It's one of the most important books you could probably buy. It came out earlier this year called The Healthy Programmer, and it basically, in a very scientific and robust way, takes you through and shows you how to be healthy and all of the things that are going to go wrong if you're not. And I tweeted Joe and asked him what his one tip would be for this, and he said, go for a walk. And the book starts by saying how important walking is. It gives a couple of quite scary things. 20 minutes of exercise each day reduce your risk of dying prematurely by 20%. That's a good reason to do 20 minutes of exercise a day. This one scared me more, which was 5 minutes of activity every hour can reduce your risk of developing many life-threatening diseases by 11%. And that's actually specifically on an hour-by-hour basis. And what he's saying here is you need to take breaks. And I really struggle with this. So I'm somebody who will really enjoy plugging in and coding for 5 hours and just not having a break, just being in that zone and going. And I can do some really good work in that time. But one thing I've learned is that when I do that, especially if I do it for a couple of days in a row, I'm then really knackered for the next few days. Even if I'm not working long hours, just that continuous process, actually, it leaves me unable to think as clearly for the next few days. And so actually, taking a 5-minute break, going for a 5-minute walk every hour, increases the level of your productivity so much on a macro scale rather than a micro scale, that although you get slightly less done in those 5 hours, actually the wins over the week massively outweigh it. And sleep. Sleep is the one that I'm probably the biggest hypocrite on out of everything I'm speaking about here. I didn't get much sleep last night. My brain wouldn't turn off. And so I'm probably experiencing some of these symptoms I'm going to tell you about now. But these are the symptoms that you get if you don't get a good night's sleep. So your level of cortisol, which is your stress hormone, increases. Your levels of leptin, which regulate your energy, decrease. Your levels of ghrelin, which stimulate hunger, increase. Your insulin levels, which regulate your blood sugar, decrease. So your blood sugar levels rise, you get hungry, your BMI rises, which basically means you're getting fatter, all just because you haven't slept properly. Your frontal lobe is affected, which means you can't concentrate as well. Your prefrontal cortex is, for lack of a better word, mashed, which means you become irritable. You struggle to recognize people. You struggle to put 2 and 2 together and make logical thoughts. And your memory is fucked. This is the result of just having 2 or 3 bad nights' sleep or missing a whole night. It's really, really bad. And so I advise you as a top productivity tip to go out there and to actually make sure that you're getting sleep on a really sensible, regular basis, as motherly and patronizing as that sounds. My final thought is that input changes output. So what you put into your body affects what goes out. It affects how productive you are. This is a spider's web. This was made by a spider, unsurprisingly. But it was a spider in one of NASA's laboratories. And it was a spider that had just had a nice dinner of some flies. Pretty standard. This is a spider's web. This is a spider's web by a spider that had just had a nice dinner of some flies. But the flies have been injected with marijuana. And this is a stone spider. I'm going to quote the NASA scientist that did the experiment. The spider made a reasonable stab in weaving the web, but appeared to lose concentration about halfway through. This is a spider's web made by a spider who had eaten flies that had been given sleeping pills. It just couldn't be asked. This is my favorite, right? I love this. This is a spider's web made by a spider who had eaten flies who had been given caffeine. And I love this, because this is like me on caffeine. So look at that top right bit. Look at how intricate it is. Compare it to like the original one. It's much more intricate than anything else on there. And then the rest of it's just shit. And this is basically me on caffeine. Like, for those first 5 minutes, I could take Mats and Tenderlove easily in any programming competition. I would be awesome. For the next 4 hours afterwards, the spider could take me in a programming competition. Caffeine really affects you, and it's really, really easy to lose track of that. I used to drink a seriously stupid amount of caffeine, and I'm a big coffee nerd. I love coffee. And it's something I really struggle with, but actually being really sensible about your caffeine intake and your coffee intake, it makes a massive difference to you. So input equals output. So I'm done. A few takeaway points. Work hard if you want to achieve something. Know what motivates you and get lots of it. Know what demotivates you and work out how to combat it. Don't be afraid. Failing's OK. Work out what routine and what environment lets you achieve flow. And turn off the internet. It literally is shit. I don't know why we invented it. Inbox zero is awesome. Take care of your health. And most importantly, don't eat flies. Thank you.